Hello cubers and people of cyberspace. As you can see, I got a whole load of different cubes here in front of me, and I'm going to use them to hopefully answer some of those burning questions every cuber has, like what's the difference between this cube and that, and what's this cube like, and what's the best cube for me. So let's get some general stuff out of the way first. In case you're wondering, my average solve time is about 25 seconds when I'm in good cube mode, so it's not world class or anything, but I'm happy with it. The lube I use is this stuff, 3-in-1 silicone lubricant made by the same people as WD-40. When I lube a cube, I usually do the full disassemble of the cube, spray it on, and I'll let it dry for several hours, usually while I sleep, and then I'll just throw it back together when everything's dry. Let's see, what else? All these cubes have come from cubeforyou.com. It's not that I'm endorsing the site or anything, it's just all the cubes I could get from the same place, so it's just convenient. And as far as rating the cubes go, I'll be rating them on a few different metrics, trying to be as objective as possible. And those are smoothness and turning resistance, kind of combined together. Stability, or like its poppiness. Responsiveness, and like how much feedback you get from the cube, the tactile feedback. And its feel, which is more or less going to be the subjective metric. So, without further ado, let's get to it. And this will probably be a two-part video because I have a lot of cubes to get through here. So, we'll start with the Type A's, and there are a few of them. I'll move these aside. Okay, here we go. We have the original Type A, also known as the old Type A, or just Type A, or Type A1. And these are probably the smoothest cubes I use. I have one here that's well broken in, and it's, especially when it's freshly lubed, it is just silky. It just kind of glides, which I really like. But it kind of glides too much because I'll have trouble not feeling it and over or under rotating. Sometimes I don't feel when it's properly aligned for a turn and stuff. The new one, it's not broken in, about the same in every way, it just doesn't feel as silky as the well broken in one, so that's the difference you're gonna have. So smoothness, very smooth, especially when freshly lubed. The plastic is like the softest out of all the cubes I have. It's not to say it's soft plastic, it's just the softest, so it's nice and smooth. You can get it so there's very little turning resistance too. Stability, I don't get very many pops on it at all. It does occasionally pop, and sometimes very occasionally I'll have it like pop and I'll get like 4 pieces coming out at me and just exploding everywhere, but pretty stable, but not the most stable cube I have. Responsiveness, again, I'm gonna have to say okay to good responsiveness, because I don't really feel it like moving into place. It just kind of glides the whole time, so you don't really feel it like the edges aligning for a turn. So that's the only downside, but I find I still can do very well with this cube. And feel, it's kind of springy. Like when you cut a corner, you can kind of feel the springs going into work, but overall, just feels kind of loose, feels very smooth, which is kind of how I like it. So if that's how you like a cube, Type A might be the one for you. A lot of people use Type A, so it's kind of tried and true. Alright, now on to the other Type A's. Type A2, and this has a different design feature, same plastic, but it has this weird feature in here where the edges and centers have these kind of ribbons, and I've heard different reasons why they put these there. I've heard it's to help it pop less, and I've heard it's helped to lower resistance, neither of which it does particularly well. Whenever I use this cube, it always feels like I'm right on the brink of popping. And when I do get a pop, I usually have like 4 or 5 pieces just like shooting out everywhere. It just kind of springs and blows them all over the place. Smoothness, because of those ribbons, it's kind of clicky, so it's not terribly smooth. Turning resistance, just a little too high for me. When it's freshly lubed, it's nice, but a little turning resistance isn't terribly great. So kind of high turning resistance. Stability, pretty low stability. I've had some catastrophic pops with this, and I got to be careful with it. Whenever I'm solving it, I always feel like it's just gonna blow up in my hands. So not the greatest stability. Responsiveness, because of that clickiness, I can usually feel when it's moving into place, so I find it is fairly responsive in that regard. And overall feel, again, it feels like something's gonna go wrong when I'm using it. I can still occasionally speed solve decently with it, but it's just too much for me. Gets my nerves on end because it always feels like stuff's gonna come out. So yeah, I don't recommend Type A too. I just get a regular Type A. There's also Type A third model. Now there is also a Type A3, which I don't have. I never bothered getting one because I have enough different Type A's, but there's also this Type A third model. And it also has a special design feature in that all the edge pieces have these little tabs on there, and those fit under the center pieces so that if a piece tries to pop, it won't come out. However, if you'll notice, I filed down the center pieces on this cube because without it I could feel the tabs kind of catching on the edge of the center pieces, so I got rid of that. The tabs aren't on both sides, so I find I still do get pops with this. Not as bad, but I still occasionally get pops. So be forewarned. Smoothness, turning resistance is kind of high. It didn't really respond all that great to lube, so not terribly smooth. You can kind of feel it when it goes past an edge. You can hear it too, click around. Stability, pretty stable because of those tabs, but I still do get pops with it, so I don't use it too much. Responsiveness, pretty responsive. I can make the turns fairly accurately, like I could feel them moving in place, again probably because of that clickiness. Let's see, feel, the plastic is thin and it feels cheap. I can't stand it. So I think it feels awful. It doesn't feel solid. It just feels like a really light, kind of cheap cube. I don't like it. It's also like 13 bucks when most other cubes are like 8. And because of those tabs, it takes forever to assemble. So yeah, I'm staying away from these cubes. Not for me. Let's see. Type B. The worst cube. I've lubed this thing like 3 times and it's still really stiff. Turning resistance is the highest. I tried loosening it up, but then it just popped all over the place, so not terribly smooth. Turning resistance sucks. Not very stable. Responsiveness, okay at best. And overall feel, just kind of crap. It is clear, so I like that. It looks kind of cool. My friends like it because it's transparent, so that's about as much use as it gets from me. On to Type C. And Type C is a good cube. I'll use it as a speed cube. My speed cubes are AC and another one I'll show you soon. And Type C, smoothness, the plastic's kind of hard, so you can feel it when it like bumps up against edges. It's not clicky though, and it doesn't like clank or anything, so it's still pretty smooth. Turning resistance is pretty low. It's really easy to make turns, especially when it's freshly lubed. Stability is the one thing I had an issue with. The way the cube is, initially, if you just put it together as is, I found it popped just a little too much for my tastes. So I got an extra bag of hardware, the spring screws and washers, which is Type A stuff. And I use the large washers under here, and it restricts the lateral motion of the centerpieces a little, and it makes it not pop as much. It still does occasionally pop, but with the modification, I find it's definitely a very usable speed cube. So. Pretty smooth, pretty low turning resistance. Stability is definitely usable, pretty good once you do the modification. Without the modification, it's usable. You have to be slightly careful though. So stability varies. Responsiveness, I like the way it feels. I found I can make the turns pretty accurately, especially when I was cubing, so that's good. Pretty good responsiveness. And the feel, it's not hard like Dainsheng, but it's not soft like Type A. It's like right in the middle. It's not tight, but it's not loose either. It's not like springy, but it's not sharp. It's just kind of right in the middle. It's like a nice kind of neutral cube. So if you're looking for something like that's in the middle of everything, Type C might be the way to go. So there you go. I'm going to cut the video here because I'm running out of time, and we'll be back for part 2.